Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Joey Klein is a transformation and mastery expert, author, speaker, and the founder and CEO of Inner Matrix Systems, a personal mastery training system for high achievers. He is the author of The Inner Matrix, leveraging the art and science of personal mastery to create real-life results. And recently, his most recent released book called Relationship Alchemy, A Practical Guide to Getting Along Well with Others. Since starting Inner Matrix Systems in 2002, Joey has trained over 84,000 individuals worldwide, wow, including executives from Fortune 500 companies, entrepreneurs, and professional athletes to ensure their vision is not only enduring, but actually creates the fulfillment and impact that they desire. Among his clients, Joey has a reputation of fixing unfixable problems, removing obstacles that keep them from living the life of their dreams, and making himself responsible for their desired outcome until it's fulfilled. He puts himself directly in the trenches with every client to ensure they achieve the results they're looking for. His methods are direct, comprehensive, and proven to produce the desired outcome every time. Joey currently lives in beautiful Colorado, where he runs, skis, mountain bikes, and does all the amazing mountainy things that you can do in Colorado, which is absolutely beautiful. Joey Klein, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Hey, it's awesome to be here. I appreciate you having me today.
It's an honor to host you. I really, really enjoy your work. I'm glad we got set up to be able to do this. And the listeners are probably getting sick of me doing this, but I do it pretty much anytime I can. Promote Colorado. Don't come to Utah. Nothing to see here. All the best trails are on the east side of the hill, not the west side. So when you're thinking about your next career move, think Denver. It's amazing. You'll have amazing adventures in the mountains. We're getting way too crowded here, so I hope people overcrowd you on the other side of the hill.
Yeah, I think we feel about the same way up here too.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
I'm
Well,
lucky. My house where I live, we have 800 acres of private hiking and mountain biking trails. So like we're kind of like have this little nest. You can go up on a Saturday and hike 3-4 hours mountain bike, and you might see three people. So it's
oh my
pretty cool
goodness.
sanctuary.
Wow. That's amazing. No, I was in Colorado. When was it? It would have been like 2016. It wasn't even like very, very close time wise. And I remember thinking it was a Saturday. I was driving home. It was a December Saturday. And I'm like, okay, I got to go down I-70. I should probably leave like around 5:30 a.m., 6 in the morning to beat the skiing traffic. And leaving that
Oh
early, I
no.
absolutely did not beat the skiing traffic at all. Stuck in traffic forever. And that was years ago.
Yeah, I have a rule. You never drive up the mountain on a Friday, and you never go down on a Sunday. Thursday
That's
to
smart.
Thursday to Monday, Saturday to
Just
Monday.
out of the question.
Just
Well, it sounds
avoid
like you've got a it sounds like you've got a great spot where
it.
you can get your running and trail done. Whereabouts exactly are you in Colorado?
I'm in the foothills, so right outside of Denver. It's called Morrison.
Yeah.
And then like we're right next to like I-70, 285, all that. So you can pop up I-70 in the Urn Vale or like Beaver Creek skiing about an
Yeah.
hour and a half up to the mountains. So it's a good little
That's
spot.
awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. My wife's parents live in Evergreen, so that's just right by Morrison. We
Oh
drive
yeah,
through
it's
there
like
all the
15
time,
minutes
and
up the hill.
so close. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
absolutely beautiful. Last time we were there, we hiked around Red Rocks, which is a super cool facility, and yeah, it's a special place. And again, you were recommended by one of our mutual friends, Garrett Gunderson, and I never asked him. I'm going to ask you, how do you know Garrett?
I met Garrett through a mutual friend, actually, Reagan Archibald. He's my functional medicine doctor, been working with him for years. And he, for a while, was like, you got to meet Garrett. You got to meet Garrett. And then one time I went to visit Reagan, actually. And he's just like, oh, by the way, Garrett's coming to meet with us at 2 p.m. So he just kind of like threw us together and figured it would work out, which, I'm grateful that he did.
Yeah, me too. I get to train him and his family a few days a week. And as much as I want to talk a bunch of shit on Garrett, he's absolutely wonderful. He's an amazing person. He's
Yeah,
just as cool in person as he puts himself out to be. And
true.
they're just all wonderful people. So yeah, really, really grateful to know them. And you have a very, very interesting story. When I really first got into personal training, nutrition coaching, I thought people were hiring me, so I would give them the exact right exercises, count to 12 perfectly, put the exercise in a certain order, tell people exactly what to eat. And I really underappreciated how much of what I would be doing was so centered around emotions and, helping people with motivations and, consistency and all those things. And it just really, again, was surprising to me that in our nutrition consultations, for example, like we would always have a box of Kleenexes that would get well used because I don't think I don't think they're different. Trying to make a body transformation, changing your physical body, changing your appearance for whatever reason, with also changing the mind and changing how you experience emotions. I think they all really run together, and your work certainly seems to confirm that.
Yeah, 100%. And matter of fact, it was interesting 'cause, like when I first started training people similar to like health and nutrition, I thought, oh, my job is to basically give the people the frameworks on what to do. Like if they were struggling financially, oh, I'm going to give them the financial system to follow. Or like if their relationship was struggling, I'm going to give them the tactics to follow. But then I quickly realized that people weren't not thriving because they didn't know what to do. It was because they couldn't get themselves to execute that which they knew to do a lot of times. And that's where all of a sudden the inner game came into play, where it was like all about managing, emotional management and mental management. And there was like a whole inner construct that had to be developed and addressed in order for the action to occur so the results could happen.
Yeah, no, that's so well said. And you went through quite the journey yourself. Again, not only spiritually, mentally, but also physically. You've been all over the world, kind of learning this stuff. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got into what you're doing today and how you work with people now?
Yeah, a lot of like what drove me was necessity. I was in a lot of pain, a lot of turmoil, a lot of difficulty, and I was like, man, I need to figure out just how to make life work because if I keep living how I am, I'm probably not gonna be around too long. And so, I found a mentor that was more of like a kind of a spiritual mentor who was more ingrained in like ancient wisdom traditions. And I ended up being a live-in student with him in Boulder, Colorado. And then I ended up meeting like a guru who was entrenched in like Hindu mysticism, had direct ties to like Varanasi, India. So I ended up there for many months, meditating 10 hours a day, every single day for months at a time. And I ended up staying with like a Buddhist master, in their temple in Thailand for, several months and studying like Taoist meditation and Buddhist meditation. And then after I kind of did a deep dive into the ancient wisdom traditions, which in my opinion have been working on sort of, the development of the psyche or psychology for thousands of years, whereas modern psychology is just like a few hundred years old. And so they just I noticed they had a very different approach around how to manage inner well-being than modern psychology. Eventually, I met a world-renowned psychologist in Los Angeles, Dr. Lou, and she ended up teaching me psychology, and I ended up teaching her what I called inner training, which was all the meditation and all the mindfulness things I learned traveling all over the world in India and Thailand and Japan, etc. Martial arts background and whatnot. And this is 20 years ago, right? Like you could not, like if you said meditation, people thought you had horns out of your head and you were just like a weird hippie or something like that. It was not modern or accepted the way that it is today, right? And I remember, as I taught her the things that I was teaching her and she was teaching me back and forth, she started lobbing me high profile clients. And so here I am, this kid from like Wichita, Kansas, very humble beginnings. I'm living in Los Angeles, seeing clients in Beverly Hills and Bel Air, and all of our clients were like famous actors and actresses and executives at Sony and Fortune 100 and 500 companies and things like this. And all of a sudden, that was my book of clients because the things I was teaching, hit the mark in a way that most of their traditional therapies just couldn't. And then she ultimately, connected me to a Harvard-trained neurologist who helped me understand why inner training or meditation and the things in which I was teaching people was so effective, and he helped me to create a system out of it. And then that kind of, led one thing to another. I ended up having a full practice, about 98 people a month is what I was seeing. I had a 200, 300 person wait list. And then, people asked me to start teaching workshop seminars. So I started teaching workshop seminars. That led to teaching throughout Japan and Europe, the United States, where I was teaching at peak, like 42 weekend seminars a year. Almost like every week I was teaching and training publicly to either anywhere between, 100 and 200 people up to, several thousand people. And it just kind of took off. And so ultimately, here I am 22 years later doing the same thing, trying to get better at it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Did you have a tough time adjusting, like going, to the places that you're talking about and spending so much time meditating in India and Thailand, like to experience such a slower kind of pace of life and to be with yourself and again, 10-hour meditations or however long they were all day. Was that difficult then for you to come back to the West and adjust to the pace of life? Like you said, like LA is a totally different monster. How were you able to make that adjustment?
Yeah, so it's funny because like when I first went to India, it was like this huge culture shock. Because when I got there, I remember it was like the pollution was really bad, right? And you get off the plane and it's brown. You can't see very far. And the smells were pretty crazy. And I
I've heard
remember the
that.
airport at that time was not new the way it is now, and there were rats running across just the floor of the airport. And I remember thinking I never saw anything like that before. I'd never been to a third world country. And I was like, what did I get myself into? And if you go to Varanasi, it's like, animals are roaming the streets, and it's like going back in time thousands of years. And there's, dirt roads and cobble brick stones. And the only sewage there is it rains and washes everything into the Ganges, into the river. And so it was like going back in time thousands of years. And then, there's these rituals that have been done there for thousands of years, and they've been doing it that same way for forever, right? And so it was like there was this huge culture shock because I was like, where am I? What am I doing? The whole environment was different. And everything was community based. It was interesting because like people were very friendly though, and people were very connected. And as I started watching and paying attention, people were really happy and like genuinely happy. And honestly, like even still today, like when I walk around and for the most part, you going through the United States or the Western society, I don't see people as like what I would call obviously happy. I think that most people are dissatisfied or anxious or stressed out or overwhelmed. And so it was weird to be in an environment where people were just genuinely joyful and like connected to each other and knew each other. And at first it was really weird and it was really awkward. And it was very different. And then, I woke up 5 a.m., meditated 8, 10 hours, went to bed at 9 p.m., woke up, did it all over again. Like that was the routine of the day when I was there. And then I remember coming back to LA, and I landed and I got off on the airport, and I never felt so isolated before because I was around all these people, but nobody could care any less. Like nobody cared that I was there. Whereas in India, I couldn't walk down the road without people saying hello or, saying hi to me. And just genuinely wanting to connect and make sure I was okay. And that's just kind of how it was. It was very, very community orientation to it's like, oh, I could probably like cease to exist here. Nobody would really miss it because everybody's just so into whatever they were doing. So it was a culture shock in the opposite way when I came back to the States the first time, where it was like, oh, we're more disconnected here than probably most of the world. It was fascinating.
Yeah, that really is. It's still, it's still crazy to me. Like walking around in my own neighborhood, how few people say hi back when you say hello or smile at them or anything. Just so few people say that back. You're right. It's just not part of our culture. And doing the 8 hour, 10 hour meditations and all these amazing things that you got to do, that's awesome. But you're not going to do that with the people in LA, right? They don't get to do that and participate in that. So what were some of the key concepts that you were able to distill down and make into, like we said in the introduction, more of like a system that tends to work with most people?
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, like what I've learned about neurology and the brain, like one of my good friends is a neurologist, so I geek out and like pick his brain all the time about it, like how the brain works, the impacts on the brain. The reality is we don't need to do 10 hours a day of inner training or meditation to, create a significant outcome and result. Matter of fact, there's a lot of more efficient ways to produce better outcomes is what I've learned over the years also. And so like what I find is like people just really need to be willing to do two key things if they want to create great progress in what I think of as really mastering themselves or training a new way of being. And a lot of people, it's like they go, well, why would I train a new way of being? And the way I kind of explain it or like make it very simple is like if you woke up, like if you think to when you woke up to this morning, and you ask yourself the question, like, what did I wake up to? Who did I wake up to? Most people can't answer that question. And when people start to pay attention to it, it's like, well, I woke up to anxiety. The first thing that occurred for me when I got out of bed was anxiety or overwhelm or worry or fear. And it's like, well, what would it be like if you woke up to joy every day? What would it be like if you woke up to a sense of just like resounding peace within yourself or like a sense of gratitude or just like love and connection that you're experiencing as yourself within yourself, and that's what you got to wake up to every day, and that's what you like regularly felt throughout the majority of your day as you lived your day. And for me, that's what mastering ourself means. That's the point of inner training is to truly create inner well-being. Like how do we train the emotions we want to experience the majority of the time? How do we train ourselves to access those? And then how do we make sure the energy that we are expressing with the people that we love and we're bringing to our careers is the energy that we want to be known for by other people. Like, do I want to be known by other people as angry and resentful and short and curt and, all those things, dismissive, or do I want to be known as like caring and compassionate and, strong and resilient and loving and, so on. And it's like, well, if we pick who we get to become, like we're all going to say we want these higher attributes as ourselves, but a lot of people never realize them. And it's like, well, what does it take to really create that? If you know how to train it, it takes maybe 10 to 20 minutes of committed, focused effort a day and to be consistent over time. Like if you're willing to dedicate 10 to 20 minutes of focused effort daily would be optimal, but even if you just get it in like 2, 3 days a week, you can radically redefine yourself in a matter of 3 to 6 weeks.
Wow. Wow, that's impressive. Why is that the default for most people? Why is it that the fear, the anxiety, why does that become the default for most people when, yeah, like all of us would like to feel like a little bit more peace, a little bit more joy, a little bit more love? Why is the voice in my head so negative all the time?
Yeah. Well, I think it's two things, right? Is because if you look at small children, right? Like my friends are all having babies. Like I don't know why, like everybody seems to do it at the same time. So I'm around a bunch of 2 to 4 year olds all of a sudden, 2 to 5 year olds. And it's interesting because when you look at a child, they're pretty carefree. Like their nature is kind of like joy and curiosity and fun and adventure. Like most children are not burdened, if you will. And so we didn't realize it, but the emotions, which is directly linked to our nervous system and the way we think, got conditioned. And so we didn't realize it, but school and our environment and our parents and different influences in most people's lives actually conditioned fear-based thinking and emotions. And then it became a reflex, it became a habit, it became what we do. And so a lot of us, we wake up to these more painful things or fear-based states, that's anxiety, overwhelmed, etc., because it got conditioned into us and we didn't even realize it was happening. But then second, our nervous system does have a negative bias. So like our nervous system, just in terms of how the brain works, it goes, man, my job is to survive. And so I'm going to pay attention and I'm going to look for any threat that may be available or might be out there so that I can avoid it, so that I can make sure I live another day. And so we kind of have this negative bias where our brain, if we're not actively directing it or teaching it what we need it to do or training it to operate on our behalf, it's kind of always looking for where's the next thing that's going to hurt me or kill me and how do I avoid it. And so it's looking for it anticipates the negative things about life as opposed to naturally anticipates the positive things or the things we aspire to in our life.
Yeah, that's really well explained. Garrett obviously writes a lot about money, writes about soul purpose, writes about how, wanting more money is not necessarily like taking money from somebody else, that the pie can always continually grow. And I realized in my life, that's been my thing is money. Money is scarce. It's going to run out at some point. I'm not going to be able to get more of it. I always just kind of think that way. And I did a workshop with Garrett a few years ago. And the first question he asked me was, what is your first recollection of money? And it didn't take me long to realize my first recollection of money was stealing money from my parents in their underwear drawer. I think I stole $60 and took it to the gas station and bought all the candy I could possibly buy with $60. In fact, that was a lot more than you could buy today. But that to me kind of is an illustration of maybe what that's like. Why am I still experiencing, this fear of, lack of abundance? I'm not going to be able to make money. I'm not going to get more, whatever. When my first memory with money is something where I'm taking money from somebody else to get something I want. You know what I mean? Like it's pretty powerful.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And like, well, why are we taking it? Well, because it wasn't readily given to us or nobody
Exactly.
showed us what to do with it. Right. It's like we inherit these kind of unhealthy, unproductive inner dynamics, right? Because what we learn even before behavior is we learn emotional patterning. So like if you look at it, we start learning emotion or emotional imprinting starts when we're actually in the womb of our mother. And so like if our mom feels sad, we start to learn and adopt sadness. Sadness gets imprinted in our nervous system. If I'm around and then I'm born, right? And then the first few years, like I can't talk because I don't really have language formed yet. And so the first like 2 to 5 years of our life, most of our communication system is all emotion. Like if people around us are anxious or overwhelmed or angry, we're learning to experience ourselves that way. If our environment is joyful and inspirational and passionate, we learn to experience ourselves that way. And obviously, nothing is ever good or bad. It's a mixture of all this stuff. But the point is, we just sort of adopt that which is our environment. And then later, we start to hear thoughts or beliefs or concepts about the world because we're talking and now language is there. So emotion is first, then like language and thought communication gets anchored or superimposed on top of those emotions of the feelings. And then ultimately, we now take action and we do stuff, we make choices, decisions, etc. And so what a lot of times what happens is people go, I want to be wealthy, as an example, if we're talking about money. And then they go, well, I'm not saving, I need to save. And then they try to save money or they try to invest. But what they really need to do is actually go into that core unconscious programming of their emotional imprinting and look at what is their fundamental relationship with money. Like when I think of money, how do I feel? Like when I ask people the question, when you think of money, how do you feel? They go, I feel disgust, I feel anger, I feel overwhelmed, I feel afraid. Very few people, when you ask them, like, how do you feel about money? When you hear money, what do you think of? Oh, I feel joyful and I feel courageous and I feel fun and I feel love and I feel, gratitude. It's like, well, if I felt those things tied to money, all of a sudden I'm probably going to attract a lot more of it to me. And then we've got to train the mental frameworks to sort of get ourselves to relate to it in a certain way so we can do the right things with it. And then ultimately the action comes. And so what I think is a lot of people, when they look at, what's driving, in their life, they look to the outcomes they're getting that they either like or don't like, that they're often dissatisfied with, and where they go, well, what do I need to do to create a new outcome? And it's like, if we want to really start create change, we have to redefine our relationship to how we're interacting with the world. And instead of focusing on current circumstance in the past, we've got to start designing the future in a real way and go, well, who is the person I want to become? And what is the life I want to live? Like, what is the vision for life that I want to aspire to? And then who is the person I need to train myself into that actually aligns with that reality? And when we kind of, doesn't sound like a big deal, but if we can focus on the future reality of who we want to become or what we want to create, the results we want to get, and start truly aligning who we are with that, it opens up possibilities that doesn't occur for most people because they focus on the current circumstances of life, their current challenges, or where they've been in the past, and they get stuck in this loop.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. And recently on your podcast, you've been talking about this as it pertains to body transformations. Both of us have obviously worked with a lot of people who that's one of their goals. They want to transform their body. Yet we know what happens with people. People seem like they're super motivated and then they're not. Maybe they quote unquote run out of willpower. Maybe they self-sabotage. All the kinds of things that we see with somebody that wants to, be more fit, be more healthy, whatever it is. What are some of the specific things around improving someone's health and fitness that you commonly run into?
Yeah. So the thing I notice is similar as I was just talking before. Most people focus on where they're at, that what they don't want, right? I'm too heavy. I look disgusting. I'm not eating well. I need to eat better. I don't have any energy. Like they have the list of stuff they want to go away, right? Generally speaking. And then the next step is, well, how do I solve for that? What do I do to get it to go away? And then even if they do create a goal or a benchmark for themselves, it's really them answering for some perceived challenge. I'm heavier than I want to be, so I want to lose 20 pounds. Or I don't have any energy, so I need to eat better, so I have more energy, right? And it's like, well, the first step is let's change the game altogether. And what I encourage people to do is I go, hey, imagine there were no problems. Imagine there was nothing wrong with your body. And imagine the life you want to be living at the level you want to live it. And imagine it out like a year or 3 years from now. So like if I do that, I think, man, I want to be able to get up and trail run every day. And I want to be able to ski with my friends. And like this last weekend, I was on my mountain bike 2 hours a day and doing pretty technical trails and descending pretty fast. And I'm on stage like this weekend. We're doing Power of Emotion. I'm going to be on stage for 12 hours, 2 days in a row. And then I have another program right after that, Monday, Tuesday. I'll be on stage for another 10 hours. So I'm going to be on stage 10 to 12 hours, 4 days straight. And it's like that takes a lot of energy, right? And so when I think about just all the things I want to do, it's like, oh, that's the body that I need for that. And so it's like if we stop and we really go, how do I want to live? And we imagine that life in the way we would love to aspire for it to be, Then it's like, okay, what's the body in which I need to start building so that I can have that reality? And it's like we go to future focus. And then when we name that reality we want to live, then the second thing is, if I had all of that right now, how would I feel? What would be the experience of myself emotionally? And it's like, well, if I had that body, I would be confident in myself, and I would be at peace, and I would feel a lot of love, and I'd be inside gratitude. And it's like, let's name that those emotions that would be there. And then the third step is learn to activate those emotions with current circumstances. So my body hasn't changed yet, but can I learn to activate confidence or passion or courage or joy or peace or whatever it is, love that I want to feel, that I kind of imagined in that future reality. And then when I feel that, okay, now go work out. Okay, I feel that emotion. I can turn it on in myself. Now let's eat the thing for breakfast that I know I should be eating as my nutrition plan, right? And it's like learning to go activate or turn on the way I believe I would feel if the vision for myself and my body was already fulfilled. What would that energy be? And then linking it to the actions in which I need to take that are ultimately the foundation for those outcomes.
Got it. It's so different than somebody training for a marathon or an Ironman triathlon or whatever. Like you think the finish line is going to be this amazing thing and it's awesome and everybody's going to care and your life's going to be so much better having done that thing. And you don't realize until you get there that it's just like it comes and goes like that. And the next day,
Yeah.
nobody really cares if you did a marathon or an Ironman. They really don't. They care about their own
Right.
lives and they're happy for you. They should be. But like if you didn't do any work or you didn't appreciate that it was all the practicing, it was all the swimming in the pool, it was all the training runs that you didn't want to do that sucked and you did them anyway, that you did the work. If you, for example, stand on stage at a bodybuilding contest and you haven't like worked on yourself and do everything that you're describing in those steps, you're not going to be happier. You're just going to feel just as miserable the next day as you did
Mhm.
before. You know what I mean? It's not fixing the problem.
Yeah, and so many like pro athletes that I've trained or individuals who were bodybuilders, right? Things of this nature. It's like they were some of the most unhappy people that I've known because what a lot of times can happen is training becomes sort of the coping mechanism, right? So it's like if I don't know how to make life work and my way, it kind of starts like, oh, I need to de-stress. So I go to the gym and I work out and I like clear my head and that kind of thing. But then life gets hard again. So then I go work out, life gets hard again, I go work out. And then you get an endorphin hit, right? And there's like a rush, and you know what I mean? Like if you're working out hard, you're not thinking. So there's a lot of like pleasure benefits to training working out. If we're not dealing with the whole self, then all of a sudden, to your point, like we can get really fit and be in amazing shape, but be really unhappy emotionally. And it was interesting because these people who were at the top of their game in terms of athletics, some of the best in the world at what they were doing, and some of the most fit people I ever met were some of the unhappiest inside because it was like they kept sort of, doing the thing they knew to do. And it was their way of managing life to a certain degree, but they didn't develop these skills for this other stuff. And so when we can put the two together, that's the game changer. And most people, they never really get there because working out initially for most people isn't pleasurable, right? It's like you become more uncomfortable in the beginning and it's kind of you feel awkward at the gym when it's unfamiliar and unknown to you and all that kind of stuff. And so actually you have to learn, for what I'd learned with training most people, is they have to overcome the negative bias to training so that it becomes a new routine so they can develop a healthy reality even if they're never going to be like an athlete or something like that. It's like, oh, I just need to pay attention. Like when I wake up and I think about working out, what do I feel? Oh, I feel hatred and I feel fear and I feel embarrassment. Well, if we can learn to activate, like joy or a sense of fun, and we can feel that within ourselves and then go do a workout, before we know it, we're linking that joy to working out, as weird as it sounds, right? The old neurological, statement, neurons that fire together, wire together. And so all of a sudden we can kind of, we want to train ourselves to show up for what we want to do. And if we're training our internal self so that we're training ourselves to show up for working out, both basically we become a master of self-motivation. And if we can master self-motivation, you can then put into the routines, whatever that routine dynamic is or whatever that behavior dynamic is relative to what you want to create, and you can really create just about anything you want in your life, physical or otherwise.
Yeah, got it. Okay. So is this what the 10 to 20 minutes a day kind of looks like, is going through these steps and really being very aware of those kinds of things and doing those practices?
I think that it's like it's training the right toolkit, because I think a lot of people today when they think meditation, they go, "Oh, I'm supposed to sit down and relax, or I'm supposed to clear my head so that I don't think." And I think it's done a real disservice for what internal training or like what meditation really can be, which should be, in my opinion, we should think about it as the exact same approach as like physical training. Like if I want to your point, like run a marathon, I need to go out and I need to learn the technique for running. And I probably need to start with like a slow run, and then I need to start maybe learning intervals or how to sprint. And it's like there's a plan. There's like learning movement patterns, learning the right, engaging the right training is going to create the right tools, techniques, capacities within myself so that I can go do the thing I want. And when people look at internal training, for some reason, so many people think, oh, I'm supposed to have this epiphany and then everything's great, as opposed to looking at it as, no, no, I have this set of reflexes that I'm engaging in my life. I have a set of habits or patterns that I'm re-engaging again and again and again from an emotional, mental, nervous system, and action standpoint. And so if I look at it as, oh, I'm not looking for my epiphany or my awareness, but I'm looking to learn the right movement patterns, the right pattern dynamics. I'm gonna learn how to retrain my inner mechanisms so that I have a whole new set of reflexes. It's like, oh, I'm gonna go through a training process as opposed to an epiphany process. Most people are looking for an epiphany that's gonna change everything. But when we shift that mindset and we go, oh, I'm going to engage a training process that's going to develop a core set of competencies and capacities that's then going to give me access to executing a new way in my life. Now the game changes. And so what we want to do is we want to create a space for training, just like you would go to the gym. Like, hey, I'm gonna train at the gym an hour a day, and I'm gonna do these sets of exercises so I get stronger, so I lose weight, so my movement patterns get better, and so on and so forth. Hey, I'm going to dedicate this 10, 20 minutes to inner training so that my ability to be aware of and sensitive to emotions greatly increases. Because the average person, if you ask them how they feel, they can't even tell you the emotion that's present. But that emotion, as I said before, is dictating all their choice, decisions, actions. So it's like, great, let's do the right training technique that's going to develop increased awareness and sensitivity to emotions and my feelings. Then let's start training emotional resilience in 3 ways. So I have the capacity to feel a certain way and execute that which I choose to execute despite my feelings. Man, I feel sad today. I feel overwhelmed today. I can go work out despite the way I feel. And I can do that on a regular basis. That's a skill. Hey, let's learn to now be aware of what we're feeling, and how do we center that? How do we shut that feeling off from a nervous system standpoint? How do we deactivate that feeling? Let's develop that skill. And then let's develop the skill of activating and accessing emotions I've never felt before, such as joy or confidence or compassion or love or whatever it might be for somebody, or peace, right? And then let's start becoming resilient there so I can hold that state within myself in a stronger fashion so that when the shit hits the fan, so to speak, and life gets hard, I can still feel grateful. I can still feel compassion. I can still feel, confident or peaceful within myself and execute from that emotional space. And so it's like we can name, hey, here's the technique or the tactic. Here's the competency that we're developing. Then when we have that core competency, now we can execute the next set of skills and tactics and training that will develop the next competency relative to increasing our ability of performing in life.
Mm. I love that, man. I think that's a very helpful and empowering way to approach that. And a lot of this is covered in your first book, The Inner Matrix. I wanted to ask you about your most recent book, Relationship Alchemy. Can you tell us why you thought that needed to be written as well?
Yeah, so in the Inner Matrix, to your point, like it's a deep dive. Like I wanted the book to do 3 things. Like one, I wanted it to educate people and give them the science behind like why inner training is so effective, why it works, and what kind of results and outcomes can people create. So it's got all the science in the book. It's got like real case studies from clients I've worked with through the years of like, here's the kinds of things they created, right? And these are like one of the people in the book is a 6-time cyclocross champion, right? He was one of my clients. And then you got everything on the other side, from like just stay-at-home mom and dads to like attorneys who were managing and building businesses, right? And so it's like case studies of like, here's where they were, here's what they applied, here's where they ended up. And then it's also like a toolkit, like, hey, here's your manual of tools, techniques, and strategies that you can execute. Here's the competencies it's going to create, and here's how to do it. So it was also like a training manual. And so, I created that, and we kind of, supported people with that, all over the world. And then it was like, what I realized was there was three key areas where people kept asking additional questions, or they needed the structure, right? What I call the structure to produce what they wanted, which was like the tactics and the systems to follow. And it was like they were either looking to optimize relationship, they were either looking to optimize money and wealth, or they were looking to optimize body and health. And what I found was like everybody was asking me to write relationship alchemy. They're like, can you, because I used to do in-person workshops twice a year. And they're like, man, we want to work on this, not just, 2 times a year in these workshops. Like, can you write a book? Can you create a curriculum that we can study on a regular basis? Like what we have with, the inner matrix, right? Inner matrix systems, the book, the inner matrix. And so I was like, yeah, sure. And so I actually took a vote with my community, and I was like, do you guys want a book on relationship, body health, or a career in finance? And it was like 80% was like,
Wow.
please do the curriculum on relationship first. And so, 22 years, I've been in the trenches with people. And a lot of times, the people come to me, they're like, we're on the brink of divorce. If working with you doesn't work, no stress, but like our family's gonna, be a broken, two homes, and we're gonna go down that road, and that kind of thing. And business partners who are like about to, sue each other, and they're trying to dissolve the business. And like a lot of the times, like people aren't coming because things are great; they're coming because it's broken. And so I learned, like, man, here are the key things that break relationships down, and we should probably not do those things. And then here are the key things that when we got people to do them, produced relationships that truly thrived, whether it was a business partnership, whether it was like parent child, teenager, romantic relationship. It's like the key to making sure relationships thrive. There are some key fundamentals that if we follow them, relationships are going to thrive. And so that's basically what relationship alchemy is like, 22 years, and training over 84,000 people through our program seminars, many of, thousands of those I worked with one-on-one, of like, hey, here are the core things people do to break relationships down. Here's how not to do them, and here's what we should do instead. And it's the frameworks and the tactics of like, what's going to set up a relationship to thrive.
Okay, gotcha. And you wrote it in kind of like three different parts. I don't know if that's the right word, but you basically kind of write about how you need to deal with yourself, you need to deal with the relationship, and then you need to deal with the other person. Can you comment on each one of those three things and how we can be more focused on each of those?
Yeah, I call it the three aspects of relationship.
There
So
we
it's
go.
like first aspect is ourself, and we need to really be 100% ownership, right? Like let's take 100% ownership responsibility of our relationship, because at the end of the day, we are the center of all relationships in our life. Like we are ourselves. So it's like first aspect is ourself. Second aspect is the relationship itself. And so like what we put into the relationship in concert with what the other person is putting into the relationship creates this unique kind of symphony or dynamic that becomes the relationship. And no two are exactly the same. And then there's the third aspect of relationship, which is the other person. And how we manage each of those aspects, ourself, the relationship, or the other person, is going to determine whether or not the relationship thrives, becomes what we really want it to become, or it breaks down. And it's important to understand these aspects because, like, as an example, a common mistake people make is they'll make themselves responsible for how somebody else's feels, the third aspect of relationship, the other person. And it's like, oh, they're sad. And so they're making themselves responsible to try to alleviate that sadness. And it's like, as much as you may love somebody, you can't actually make them feel a different way. You can influence them, you can hold space for them, but that's very different than making them feel a different way. And then vice versa. A lot of times we accidentally make other people responsible for how we feel. It's like, man, I feel insecure. You must be doing something wrong. And it's like, oh, wait, if we understand these three aspects and we go, wait, that's my insecurity. I'm going to learn to manage that so I show up well with you. And hey, you feel sad over there. I'm going to accept that's okay. I'm going to allow you to be sad. I'm not going to make myself responsible for that. I'm not going to take that personally. All of a sudden, like that alone gives us the ability to start showing up in relationship in a much more constructive way.
Got it. Okay. And I know you write about this as well. Something that I also struggle with is setting boundaries. That must be a really important thing along those lines of like, I can't make you feel a certain way. I need to deal with myself. If I set a certain boundary, again, myself and tons of other people I know have a really tough time sticking with those boundaries.
Yeah. What I find is like the common mistake people make with boundaries is it's like code for getting you to do what I want. Like I'm going to set this boundary, but what I'm really doing is just trying to get you to do whatever I want, right? And so the way that we can, feel confident in setting boundaries is actually the boundaries of the third step. The first step is constructing a really clear outcome or vision for what we want the relationship to be. What is the result we're looking to create? And then number two, getting clear on what are our expectations in one of three forms, right? Expectation in the form of need. I require this in the relationship, otherwise the relationship ends. Wants, which is like, hey, I would love to have this, but it's not a deal breaker if it doesn't occur. And then desires, which is like, take it or leave it. Those are all different levels of expectation. And so when I understand what my expectation is and I qualify that it's a healthy expectation, like getting this expectation met is going to support the alignment with the vision that I hold and it's supportive for the relationship. Now I want to set a boundary as a way to reinforce the healthy expectation. So like as an example, a lot of people have an expectation in friendship that you're on time. Like me and my buddy, we went out to dinner last night and it's like, hey, 5:45, let's meet at the restaurant. And I was there at 5:45 and he was there at 5:43, right? And it's like if I showed up regularly at 6 o'clock, our relationship wouldn't be doing very well, right? So it doesn't sound, it sounds pretty basic, but I can't tell you how many relationships, marriages break apart because of timing conflict. Like one person wants to be on time, the other person never is, and they're fighting about it all the time, right? And so it's like if I have this expectation that like being on time or having people show up on time with me is a need, well, now I can communicate that. I can be like, hey, buddy, you're usually 10, 15 minutes late. It's really important to me that you're on time. I value our friendship. When I'm sitting there for 10, 15 minutes by myself, doesn't make me feel very good, doesn't seem like I'm valued, and it's also not a good use of my time. So like, hey man, if you don't show up on time, I'm gonna leave 5 minutes after. I'm not gonna make plans with you anymore. Like the boundary is reinforcing the expectation to be on time or whatever the expectation may be. But a lot of individuals, they don't know what their expectations are, so they struggle setting the boundaries and they don't understand that by reinforcing the expectation, that's how they make the relationship thrive or the vision for a relationship happen. And so they don't put the level of import sometimes on holding the boundary to uphold the expectation, realizing that this is actually how we serve the other person and the relationship as opposed to it diminishing.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. I really appreciate that. I do have some personal questions for you as pertaining to kind of lifestyle things that you leverage in your own life to be as successful as you are. Before I get there, is there anything I missed about your work that you want to cover?
No, I think we did a good job of it. We have such a vast curriculum, but I think we covered some really fun things, so that was great.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so obviously you're a very fit dude. You do a lot of the same things I do with the mountain biking and running and all the stuff you do. You stayed very fit. You have the energy to do all of these conferences and meetings that are very very long. And again, in your podcast in the last few episodes, you've talked about the body and common things that trip people up, which I've really enjoyed you going into. And I know at the very least that you're aware that sugar, at least for you, is like not the best. And you even talked in a recent episode about a continuous glucose monitor and how that can be helpful for somebody. Can you tell us how your thoughts about like nutrition, exercise, whatever lifestyle things have evolved for you that help keep you at that highest level and keep you doing the things that you need to be doing day to day?
Yeah, so a while back, as my body started getting older, and I was a competitive martial artist for many years. I competed internationally at a pretty high level, and I was younger. I was in my 20s. I quit when I was like 28. Was when I stopped training, stopped competing. And what I noticed was my body, it started changing. Like during that time, I kind of ate whatever I wanted. I would show up, I'd train 4 hours a day. I would just get a lot of calories in, and it seemed to like all work out. And then all of a sudden, each year as I was getting older, I noticed it was taking a lot more to operate at the same level. And I just wasn't operating at the level I wanted to operate at. And so I did a deep dive, and ultimately I came up with a couple of non-negotiables that when I follow these key things, I find I really do thrive. And if I compromise them at any time or in any way, it starts falling apart pretty fast. And it's like number one, I always wake up and do my inner training, non-negotiable. And I think of it like nervous system management, like align with a sense of centeredness or peace. Emotional training, inner training, meditation, 20 minutes a day, first thing upon waking. Then I follow that up with 5 minutes of intentional breath work and breath hold practice. And then from there, it's nutrition and then working out in the morning. And that's like, Like it just has to happen. And then throughout the day, like I'm very good about nutrition because I really have learned to just think about nutrition as fuel. And I'm into sports cars, and it's like, man, if you don't put clean 91% or higher octane in a high performance machine, it's not going to go good, right? Or like if you put diesel fuel in a unleaded car, like we all know, you're not going to make it very far, right? The engine's going to blow up. And when I kind of started to learn about that or really took that seriously, where it was like the thing I put in my body, the nutrition I'm eating is fuel, and it's either going to burn really well and it's going to increase my ability to perform or diminish it. That made a big difference for me. And then when I started not compromising on the 8 hours of sleep, that was game changer. Like when I just made sure I was in bed by 10 every night, 10:30 at the latest, wake up 6:30 for me, and just making sure I had that solid time to rest and recover made a big difference. So it's like for me, I wake up 20 minutes inner training, I do an hour of movement every day. Nutrition is on point, and then I make sure that I get that 8 hours of sleep. And if I don't compromise on that, I feel like I can go forever.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, that's great. So for you personally, and this is a totally honest question. I did not know. I'm not sure what you follow or whatever, but for you, for nutrition, what is that fuel? What have you found to be the best source of fuel for you to keep you going again at the highest level and have the best energy?
Yeah. So I might, I might break this down and, a little bit more specifically than most people will. But I get my body weight in clean protein in every day. So I'm 185 pounds. So I get about 200 grams of protein in every day.
Yeah.
I find that works really well for me, and I space it out throughout the day, and I find that gives me nice clean energy, and my blood isn't my glucose levels aren't spiking and that kind of thing. And I really source really clean quality protein. So like, salmon, a lot of red meat, a lot of steak, a lot of bison, whole eggs are kind of my primary sources. But when I say I source it, I mean I want to know where it's coming from. So like I'm ordering from Wild Ideas Buffalo, the buffalo where they're on the free range and eating just like they would in the mountains, and they have 300,000 acres to roam on, and they're very humanely treated and all that kind of stuff, and no antibiotics, no form, like very clean, very healthy animals. And so like that's my primary source of protein. And then I love lineage. I do a lineage shake a couple days, which is basically the organs of the really, really healthy beef. And it's ground up into a protein powder. So I do a couple of shakes of that every day. And then I supplement with peptide, or excuse me, what is it? Collagen, peptides, and essential aminos. So that's like my primary fuel source is the protein. And then I'll sort of supplement like healthy fats. I do olive oil, I do avocado oil, a lot of like guacamole, avocado, whole avocado are my primary fats, some coconut milk. And then for my carbs, I have like berries, blueberries, strawberries, blackberries in the morning with usually like 3 eggs or something. Mostly fruit is my carbs, like fruit or like sweet potato or like vegetables of some kind, leafy greens, broccoli, that kind of stuff. And I'll just kind of like what I started doing recently, which I found really helps, is when I work out, I'll like be very good about getting in 35 grams of carbs pre-workout about 30 minutes beforehand, whether it's like a half a banana or like, some berries, stuff like that. And then I got good about having another 30 grams of carbs, like right when I was finished working out to kind of maintain that. And I was trying to do like fat optimized training and very low carb. And with the amount of activity I do, I found that it just didn't work for me. And so, I don't do a lot of carbs, but I kind of make sure I'm doing them. I do it intentionally. Like I make sure that I don't just have carbs to have them. I have it before I'm going to go do a lot of activity, before a mountain bike ride, before I'm on stage, before I go work out. Other than that, though, I kind of keep carbs pretty low. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that was too much, but that's kind of the general idea
No,
that I follow.
it's just funny because like I look at you, I see you how fit you are, and I can kind of guess that your diet is pretty close to what you just named. And even though you maybe did a very low carbohydrate diet and wasn't the best for you, with how active you are and how busy you are, like to add a small amount of fruit carbohydrates, like what's the big deal? That's great. That works really well for you. And I don't think you could do what you do at the highest level with being at least akin to being in a ketogenic kind of a state. And that low of carbohydrates and that much protein, you're probably pretty close. And it is just refreshing to hear somebody in 2025 say that I choose the healthiest foods, which includes red meat and, you know, properly sourced organs. Like that's awesome to hear. We're all for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and for me, I've tried a lot of different things, and for me, as I love doing blood work. I do blood work with my functional medicine doctor once a quarter. I do a full panel of testing, and so it just tells me, am I doing the right things, right? It's like if my A1C levels are off, they're off. So something's out of whack. I need to do something, right? And what I find is like when I do that, I can take care of most of it through nutrition and rest, and then I am, as I'm getting a little bit older, I do supplement with like peptides and some of these things as well. I use stem cells to fix some of my old martial arts injuries, which was awesome. And so it's like I look at supplementation and peptides and this kind of stuff is like to fill in the gaps where I need a little bit extra support. But I love doing it all based on just blood work, because it's like you look at your blood work and it just doesn't lie. It's like the truth tell. Like if I when somebody gives me nutrition advice, there's always an opinion. But when I look at my blood work, it's either working or it's not.
Yeah, that's really well said. Like I said, that was a totally honest question. You could have said you were a vegan for all I know, but again, just seeing you and knowing what you do and what you're able to perform with at such a high level, I would have assumed it would have been somewhere in that ballpark. So I really appreciate that. This has been an amazing conversation. I think it's so like we talked about in the beginning, underrated how important the mind, the emotions, the reason we do things. It is to some people's goals, whether it's related to all the things we mentioned, the relationships, work, money, changing your body. I think addressing the mind and addressing the emotions is so important, so much more important than people make it out to be. So I really love what you do. I love your mission. I'm so glad you took time out of your very busy life to be on our show today. Where can people go to find you and connect with you and your work?
Yeah, thanks so much. This has been awesome. Best place to go, joeyklein.com, joeyklein.com. Innermatrixsystems.com is a great place as well. And then on Instagram, the real Joey Klein. Happy to connect, interact with anybody through those avenues. If you go to joeyklein.com, you can actually get Relationship Alchemy at a discounted rate. And we have a lot of bonuses, stuff like that available for your people.
That's great. Okay, awesome. Well, we'll link all of that to the show notes. And for the listener, if you want to go hang out with Joey, like we said in the beginning, go to Colorado, enjoy Colorado. It's beautiful over there. Stay away from Utah for now. No, man, this has been an awesome conversation. I really appreciate all the practical tips and everything. And in all seriousness, at one point, we need to go on a mountain bike ride together, either on my side or on your side. I think it'd be really fun to get together and do that. But for now, Joey, thank you so very much for all these amazing messages and for all of your amazing work. And like I said, for taking time to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And for sure, let's get that right in.
That sounds great. I'd love to. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.